Okay, so let's talk about Justin Herbert for a second. I've made some videos where I talk about a player who everyone thought was going to be good ends up turning into a bust. Well, I figured let's kind of work the other way around now. Let's talk about a player who everyone thought was going to be a bust, and in hindsight, they turned out really good, and that was Justin Herbert. And it's unfair to say everyone thought he should have been a bust, but a lot of people did. I personally did, and it's easily one of my biggest misses, I would say. And in hindsight, I got to be honest, it feels inexcusable how wrong I was because there's so much there that's just great with Herbert going back and watching his tape. Like watch this play where you're going to see Herbert, he fakes a screen. He's going to roll out to his left, throw to his right while getting folded like a lawn chair and making a perfectly accurate throw down the field. That's an insane play that really anyone should have saw that and said, okay, well, he's, at least a first round talent. He certainly has potential there. And so I really wanted to know, what did I miss? Why did I think it was not going to work out? And honestly, I think that when I went back and watched my video, it just was a really bad video. It was just really poorly made. And it's kind of, I do think, this year I've tried to do a much better job at really diving into the film study and at the same time trying to avoid narratives that come up, because I do think that part of it is I heard the narrative that he was inaccurate, and I kind of just looked for inaccurate passes, whereas I probably, should have done a better job of ignoring the narrative and just trying to watch it on film and see it that way. But it's hard when you're evaluating a quarterback and you hear that they're inaccurate and then they miss a throw. You're like, oh, yep, there's the inaccuracy. Whereas when another quarterback does it, you might just say, okay, missed the throw, whatever. It's just one throw. Everyone misses throws. So let's talk about this play, because this play, the next two plays I'm going to show are going to be both plays I actually showed in my original YouTube video. The one which is entitled Why I Wouldn't Draft Justin Herbert. And again, it's just an awful video. I really think so. But basically what's going to happen is that it's man coverage, and that's the concept you see on the screen. There is going to be a receiver who gets open over the middle. Once this play starts, it essentially serves as a pick play type thing, because look, as you see, clearly the player who I've circled in yellow is about to get open. And he does get open, and this throw is not a bad throw. It's maybe a little bit high, but for whatever reason in my original video, I completely crushed Herbert for this. I was like, oh, what a bad throw. You can't miss that kind of throw. Really, that's a tough throw, and it did hit the receiver in the hands. It just, was a little bit high, I guess, but the extent to which I crushed him for was just completely unfair. Like this play is another really good example of another thing that I'm talking about. And again, this is simply talking about accuracy. Basically, it's a three-man rush. Herbert's going to try to fit it through a tight window. It's a difficult window to fit it through. And also, this is a 4th down and 10. So he has to make this throw. He doesn't have an option. Herbert takes the snap, and while there is a tight window, a defender jumps up and is able to knock this one away, and it gets intercepted. To me, that's not a bad play by any means. That's just to me, that's just Justin Herbert, trying something. He has to try to fit through a tight window, and there's a good defensive play. It's really hard to kill Herbert for that when I watch it now, but for whatever reason, when I watched it the first time, I thought it was a bad play. I think this is honestly just a great lesson that I got to learn, and luckily I've learned it now, and I'm definitely trying to improve on that with my evaluations this year, is that don't pay attention to what other people are saying, because most people that talk about this is something that I've learned doing this channel, is that there's so many times where you'll hear people, really evaluate a player that hasn't watched a ton of their tape. And to be honest, I didn't watch all of Herbert's season. I didn't even watch an entire season, which now I do. But last year, I just didn't take the draft evaluations as seriously as I probably should have. And I missed on really mostly Herbert. That's the big one that I'm like, okay, I screwed that one up, because I only watched probably 4 games of his, which is just not enough. So I've completely upped it now to the point where I'm really evaluating these guys more seriously. But yeah, I mean, again, I find it interesting to go back and sort of see what I was wrong about. And honestly, those things that I'm talking about, it's just so nitpicky. And the goods were so good. I just don't know what I was thinking, really. Part of what made it hard for the evaluation is just that there would be so many screen passes. That's half of the offense. So it's just hard to really see him just be in a regular offense. And the offense itself wasn't great as well. So I think those were very, things that made my evaluation just a little bit more difficult. And to defend myself a little bit, look at this play. Watch how he doesn't really rotate his hips as much as he should. Notice how this is largely just his arm that's making this throw. He very much did this with these short to intermediate passes, which you want to see a little bit more of a rotation in his hips. And so that was something I noticed. And I I sort of talked about the inconsistent throwing mechanics and how that could lead to some inaccurate passes, which it did a little bit too. Like I'm the examples I used were just bad examples. There were a little bit more missed throws in college than there were in the NFL. Because now watch here, I'm going to show an NFL play, and you're going to see how watch his hip movement. It's just better. It's still not like wild, but you definitely see how he does move the hips, which is important in those types of throws, and it makes just more accurate passes typically from a quarterback the more you get a consistent throwing motion, and on those short to intermediate passes, getting those hips to move, it's very important. So that's kind of my thing, is that I clearly look at this and I say, like, okay, yeah, there's clearly some fundamental issues here, but at the end of the day, I should have just looked at the good and seen all of these crazy throws he can make, and realized that some of these concerns were just really overblown. And it's part of why I don't really pay attention to what other people say about quarterbacks now. I just kind of go off my own thing. And, you see that my quarterback rankings were very different than the average person's quarterback rankings. But that's just because I'm not paying attention to anybody else at this point. I'm just doing what I see on tape, because I think too many people it becomes this feeding frenzy type thing where we all just agree with each other. And then sometimes those things that we're agreeing with aren't even close to being true. This was one of those times. And I think that, good for Herbert for showing everybody wrong, but honestly, kind of bad on all of us for being wrong about it. I think the tape clearly showed that he was going to be successful. And I really think that we were just kind of stupid in thinking the contrary. That's honestly what I think. In the past, I had kind of said, well, I don't know how much criticism I should give myself, because there were some fundamental things that he did fix. He fixed the hip movements. And I do agree with that a little bit, but I don't agree with it in the sense that like most people said, like, don't draft Justin Herbert. I literally made a video, don't draft Justin Herbert. And it's not like he just became a different player once he got to the NFL. He's legitimately he was a really good college player who played in a rough offense, and now he's a great NFL player because he was a really good college player. So that makes sense. We were just being kind of stupid. And part of it too, again, to give myself a little bit of an out, is I don't have all 22 footage for college. I only have the broadcast footage. So makes it a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, no doubt about it. I think that's the biggest loss I have to take about evaluating any player, period, was being wrong about Herbert. And my goal is to learn from it and not let it happen again. I really don't think it will. I'm just going to be, I completely changed my way I view quarterbacks after this, and hopefully it works out and I'm much better. And if not, I'll keep changing it, keep going back, looking at the footage, looking at my old videos, and figuring out what I have to do to get it down. And eventually I'm going to get it down. So at least that's the goal. You can never be 100%, but I'm trying to be close. So yeah, that's my thoughts. It's kind of more of a video about me than it was about Herbert sometimes, but I think it's interesting nevertheless. And I think that's part of what makes Herbert so interesting, is how so many people missed on him. So I was one of them. I brought myself into it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.